to your space, which is to be air conditioned or maintained at a certain temperature. So that is the method of heat transfer. So this is the total heat transfer sensible load gained by any building or any space, that is the conduction, convection and radiation. More on the radiation part of it. Radiation heat transfer through electromagnetic waves between the surfaces. The radiation is defined by wavelength or a frequency. It is in a form of infrared or thermal radiation between 0.8 to 100 micrometers. The solar radiations are generally 0.3 to 3 micrometers, while the light is 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers. This is the only medium, that is the radiation is the only which can travel through a vacuum also. So the sun and the earth is another, again, an example of radiant heat transfer. Now, when we talk about comfort, what are the factors generally affect the human body? Means, what are the thermal comfort factors? Dry bulb is if the temperature is high, we feel uncomfortable. There is a relative humidity, the moisture contained in the space which we are there, and if it is high, then you feel uncomfortable. Air speed, again, if the speed of the air is less, then the convection doesn't happen and heat is not transferred between the medium and the your body, and that is could create an uncomfort. If the airspeed is high, still again you feel uncomfortable. So airspeed also affects your thermal comfort. The fourth one is the mean radiant temperature. This is a new concept which I'll talk more on that in my next slide. And fifth is the metabolic rate. Now it again depends upon what type of activity you are doing. That if you are in an office work, if you are in a gym, if you are in an industry doing some hard work, so your metabolic rate depends on the type of work you are doing and what is the heat rejection by the body, and that is the metabolic rate. Then again is the clothing, what type of clothes we wear. So in the peak summer, if you wear a dark suit and go out, definitely you feel uncomfortable. So the clothing is also depends on the type of the climate, what type of environment you are there, and it definitely decides the thermal comfort of a human body. Now, when we talk about the mean radiant temperature, now mean radiant temperature is a weighted average of the temperature of all surrounding surfaces weighted by the spherical angle and the thermal emissivity of the each surface. Now, this picture shows that a man is sitting in front of a fireplace. But it's people are skiing out. If you look at out of the window, people are skiing in the peak winter over there. So it's cold outside. He's sitting in front of a fireplace, and so the comfort of that person will depend upon how near or is away from the fireplace, how much he is away from the window, that is glass window. So that is the temperature of the surfaces around him will decide the mean radiant temperature. Means you have to take the temperature of each wall and then take the average, weighted average of all the surrounding surfaces, and that will decide the mean radiant temperature. Now, for example, approximately 50% of the body is shielded by the chair. If you look at the back side of it, 50% of the body is shielded by the chair. Window is 15% of the field of the view. Fire is almost 3% of the field view. So the radiant temperature depends upon the how far, what is the distance, what is the angle. So it decides what type of heat transfer is going to happen, and it decides the mean radiant temperature. To achieve the high mean radiant temperature, fire must be progressively hot to compensate for the other lower temperature surfaces. So if the other temperature surfaces are low, now the example of a heating, if the other temperatures are very cold, then fire should be very hot, or the person should be sitting nearer to the fireplace. Now, how do we, now this, once we work out the mean radiant temperature, there is another temperature, that is the operative temperature. Operative temperature is a temperature which is felt by the person sitting in that particular place. Now, based on this example, the mean radiant temperature which has been worked out is said 25.7 degrees C, based on the data based on this calculation, we work out the mean radiant temperature. There's a formula for that, and you work out the mean radiant temperature is 25.7. Now, operative temperature is the average of the dry bulb temperature plus the mean radiant and the mean radiant temperature. Now, dry bulb temperature is the air temperature inside that room. If the operative temperature, dry bulb temperature is 30 and the mean radiant temperature is 25.7. Now, operative dry bulb temperature is the air temperature, while the mean radiant temperature is the average, weighted average of the all the surfaces. That is all the windows, then the walls, then near the wall below the above the fireplace, and the wall which is on the back side of the person sitting in the on the chair. So that is the mean radiant temperature, and the dry bulb temperature is the air temperature in that room, and average of this dry bulb temperature and mean radiant temperature is the operative temperature, and that operative temperature works out to 27.85. So this is the temperature which is actually sensed by an occupant. Now, why we are talking about the mean radiant temperature, operative temperature? I think most of the people from the air conditioning industry are not aware of this operative temperature generally, because this is not generally discussed in the. But when we are talking about the radiant technology, why that the person actually feels is the operative temperature and not what is the set of the thermostat or what is the air temperature in that particular room. Thus, even though the temperature in the room is 30 degrees C, the occupant feels 27.85 degrees C. Right? So, when we talk about air conditioning, the air which is supplied is at 15 degrees C, and we measure by a psychrometer, we measure temperature inside the room. It might be showing, say, 23 degrees C, but actually, when the person is sitting inside that particular room, is not feeling 23 degrees C, it is the average of that 23 degrees C plus whatever is the weighted, that is mean radiant temperature of the surfaces. Why I am talking about all this mean radiant temperature, operative temperature? Because this plays a major role in the radiant cooling technology. So these are very important. This shows the importance of the radiant cooling, because the surfaces where we are located play a major role in our comfort. This assumes the actor is located in the center of the room. Now, operative temperature. Operative temperature there are graphs available, and the operative temperature can be worked out based on these graphs which are available. Now, this is the based on the whatever the heat loads we do, heat transfer means conduction, convection, all that. Now, this is in relation with the human comfort. Now, our human body generally rejects the 47.5% of the heat is rejected in the form of radiant heat transfer. So, if a person who is sitting in the room, in heat load, we generally consider sensible load from a human being and the latent load from the human being. So 47.5% of the heat which is rejected by a human body in a space is in a form of radiant transfer, because our human body, that temperature of the human body is 98 degree Fahrenheit, or we can say 36.6, that is 37 degrees C is that, and we reject the heat to the surface, to the occupied space, while 22.5% is in the form of convective heat transfer. That is, when the air is moving around over your body, it picks up the heat, and that is a 27.5%. While the exhalation, that is when we breathe out and that respiration, all that, it is in the form, it is 27%. So we can say 50% of our body body heat rejection is in the form of radiant transfer. So if there is a cold surface available for a human body, it can immediately interact with that and you can feel comfortable in that case. So say 400 BTUs per hour is generally the heat rejected by human body. So 190 BTUs per hour is rejected in form of a radiant heat transfer, while 110 is in a form of convective, while 100 BTUs per hour is in a form of exhalation and other processes. While that our typical conventional air conditioning system targets the convective heat transfer. Now, when we target the convective, because we are cooling the air from our any air conditioning machine, the air is lowered at a lower air temperature is supplied into the room. That air moves into the room and it picks up the heat. So it is a convective heat transfer. So we are only picking up the 27.5 of that 27.5% of that heat from the human body through a convection. While 47.5%, we should be targeting 47.5% of the heat rejected by human body. So that is generally done by thermally active surfaces. Now, if your room is not insulated, if it's having a thin wall, then obviously your surface temperatures would be high. While even that would increase the load inside the room, and you need to supply more air quantity, and your machine size would be increased. So to cater to your total load, you are increasing the size of the machine. So you are increasing the size of the our tonnage air conditioning equipment. Now instead of that, if you make the surfaces where the person is sitting a lower temperature, then the body will directly interact with those surfaces and reject the heat, while the convective transfer can be taken care by the conventional air conditioning, and that way you can reduce the size of your conventional air conditioning equipment. Now, in relation to this, my another slide is the ancient structures in India. Now, ancient structures, there was no electricity, there was no air conditioning. So this is an example of Red Fort in Agra, where the wall thicknesses are almost 10 to 12 feet. Now the sun used to fall, sun rays fall on the wall. By the time the heat reaches the center portion of that wall, it is the evening, sun sets, and again that heat gets rejected outside, while inside surface temperature, inside surface of the wall is always cold, and it is like you are creating a cold inside surface, and the human who's occupied in that particular space would definitely feel comfortable. So this is the way our older generation managed to have the thermal comfort without air conditioning, without the electricity. You go to Red Fort, there is a darbar. There is a place where the darbar used to be conducted. There are hollow walls in that particular portion. The water used to be circulated through those walls, and the cold surfaces were created. And then there used to have that pankha, that cloth type fan, which used to be waved over those walls, and it was a convection. It was a combination of convection and radiation, and that's how the comfort was created. Now, another example, talking about the radiant, how the radiant you can achieve the comfort conditions with the radiant surfaces. Another is an example of Taj Mahal. Now, Taj Mahal, yes, everybody knows, is constructed over the Yamuna River. Now, reaching the Taj Mahal from the main gate during the peak summer is a big task. They give you those cloth sleepers and all that to reach the Taj Mahal. But once you reach the Taj Mahal, or once you get inside the Taj Mahal, you can walk barefoot. Now, because there is a river, there is a water body below this, and that cools the structure. And because of the cool structure, you can walk on that, and the complete structure gets cold, and you don't need any fan or air conditioning inside the structure. So this is another example of radiant cooling. And this was when the electricity or air conditioning was not available, people have achieved this type of comfort. Now how the cooling capacities are worked out. Now we know that our heat load comprise of sensible loads and the latent loads. The sensible loads come from your wall, solar, windows and all that, human occupants, lighting and all that. While your latent load comes from the pressure which is added and the human beings who exhalate when they breathe out the moisture. So the sensible load is generally 90% in a dry climate and 10% is your latent load. While when you go to the coastal or a humid climate, the 80% is your sensible load, while at 20% is your latent load. Now, radiant cooling, as you have seen in my earlier slide, the radiant cooling caters only to the sensible loads. It doesn't remove any moisture because we are creating a cold surface. Our body is at a 37 degrees C, and that body is rejecting to the surface heat to the surfaces which are colder than the human body. So we are reducing the temperature, so we are reducing the sensible load. Nowhere we are removing the moisture. So radiant cooling only caters to the sensible. Now another example of radiant which I missed out of the is when we walk into a cave or you go to an underground tunnel, you feel comfortable even though there is no air conditioning, nothing. Still you feel comfortable because you are below the ground level or in a cave where the surfaces are cold. And because the surfaces are cold, your body being at a higher temperature rejects the heat to this cold surfaces, and that is why you achieve the comfort in those areas. Same way, so it's all sensible cooling. We are not removing any moisture. So in Indian climate, our temperatures are high, our latent loads are also high. So the radiant cooling doesn't become a standalone system. We need to have a conventional system to remove the latent load. Now the radiant cooling capacity depends upon what is the surface area. Generally the radiant cooling capacities are worked out based as kilowatts per square meter. Kilowatts per square meter. What is the area of the floor available? What is the area of the ceiling available? What is the surface area of the wall? All this should be unobstructed. If I am doing a ceiling, then you cannot have anything, some structure below that ceiling, because it will block my electromagnetic waves, and I will not get the capacity which I should be getting from the ceiling. So my radiant cooling capacities depend upon what is the surface area available, and which are always generally defined in a watts per square meter is the capacity. Generally, when we say radiant cooling capacity, when I talk about the radiant floor, I'll talk about how the radiant surfaces are generated. That when we do a floor, generally we say we get 45 to 50 watts per square meter. Again, the capacity is related with what is the inside temperature in that particular room, because the radiant cooling capacity depends upon the temperature difference. More the temperature, say my cooled surface temperature is say 20 degree, the temperature what I want to maintain inside the room is at say 27 degrees. So then there is a delta T between the floor temperature and the room temperature. Then I get more capacity. But I say if my surface temperature is 20 and I want to maintain a temperature of 22 degrees C, then my capacity gets reduced. So generally there should be a high delta T between the surface temperature and the room temperature to be maintained. And with the Indian climate and all that, I think we should be designing our systems to 24 degrees, 25 degrees C or higher than that, because the dry bulb temperature is not the discomfort, because we move around the temperatures which are at 40 degrees, 42 degrees C, but we feel uncomfortable not because of the dry bulb temperature, but because of the humidity. Now, take an example of Pune and Mumbai. Pune, during the peak summer, the temperature goes to 42 degrees C, but still you can walk around in the 40 degree, 42 degrees C. But in Mumbai, which is only 150 kilometers from Pune, the maximum temperature during the peak summer is at 35 degrees C. But the more discomfort is because of the humidity, and you cannot walk in that peak summer in Mumbai because of the humidity and not because of travel. So that is the reason I say our air conditioning systems or the loads we should be designing at a higher temperatures to make it a sustainable model. We should not be designing at a 22 degree, 23 degrees C, because our outside temperatures are high. While if you design at 22, 23 degrees C, then the person who is walking out of the air conditioned space you are creating a thermal shock for him. So it suits your radiant cooling also, because your loads would come down, radiant cooling capacities would go up, and your sizing, you will be saving more energy with that. So this is all we are talking about the cooling capacities, what can be achieved in the with the radiant cooling system. And this helps in, I'll talk about how we can save the energy with the radiant cooling technology. Now, this is a schematic of a radiant cooling and heating system. This is the source of cold water and hot water. This is known as a manifold box, or we call it as a, in electrical terms, everybody is aware what is a DB, from where the distribution takes place. And these are the PEX piping. So in summer, the cold water from the chiller would be pumped into this manifold box. From that manifold box, a tapping would be taken, and the water would be circulated through a PEX piping, and that pipe, the return water would go into the return manifold. So this is known as one circuit. Generally, one circuit consists of a 100-meter pipe, 100 or 120-meter pipe, and that pipe would cater to an area of say 100 square feet, because this is known as the pitch between the two pipes, and one circuit of length of 100 to 120 meters would cater to 100 square feet. Now the PEX piping sizing which are available are in the 16 mm, 20 mm, 9 mm. So this cold water is circulated through these cold pipes. These pipes are embedded either inside the slab or above the slab, but in the screen, and there is a finished either tile, marble, or anything on that. Because of the conduction, because of the cold water flowing through this pipe, it would cool the surface of your pipe, and that surface of the pipe would be in contact with the concrete which is nearer to the pipe, in which the pipes are embedded, and it will cool that complete mass around that pipe, and which will eventually cool the surface of that particular floor. So that is how we are creating a cold surface. Same way, during the winter, instead of chiller, it could be a heat pump, or it could be a boiler which would supply the hot water to the same pipes, and it would increase the temperature of the surface, and it would give a comfort during the winter. Now, this is a combination of conventional and the radiant cooling system. This is a combination of conventional and radiant cooling system. Now, this is the source for the cold water. This cold water is supplied to say conventional, if it's a chilled water coil over here, and this is the heat recovery system. This cold air is supplied into this particular space, and same is being exhausted out. This the heat is recovered. This is a heat recovery. The heat is recovered. So this is a 100% dedicated outdoor air fresh air supplied into this particular area. This is a radiant surface. The return water from the conventional is taken by a three-way mixing valve and a pump to a radiant surface or a ceiling, and it cools the ceiling in this particular area. So it picks up the sensible load in this particular area, and that return water goes back to the chiller. So it can be a combination. So this particular water temperature is say 7 degrees C, 12 degrees C is going out from this particular chilled water coil. There is a three-way mixing valve, which depending on what is the temperature inside this particular room, it works out it looks at the temperature, it looks at the RH level in that, works out the dew point temperature, and based on the dew point temperature, it decides what is the based on the dew point temperature, it allows the water which is higher than the dew point temperature to be supplied into this ceiling panels, and that return water again goes back to the chiller. Now, talking about the components of the radiant system. The primary components are PEX pipes, tracks to fix this pipe, or it can be wire mesh, and the insulation. The insulation is, I start in the reverse manner. Generally, if you are doing, already the building is constructed and you want to do a radiant system, then the insulation and the below floor does not belong to you. Then that effect should not be going down to the lower floor. So the slab, on the slab, the insulation is laid. On the insulation, either the wire mesh is laid or a track to fix the pipe are laid. On this wire mesh or tracks to fix the pipes are laid, and this all this thing is completely covered either in a concrete screen, and then you have a finish of tiles, marble, or whatever finish you want. The secondary component are, once the pipes are done, it is a manifold box. In the manifold box, you have got the manifolds. In this manifold, each manifold can cater to something like 100,000 to 1200 square feet of area, so that you have a 10 to 12 manifolds or tapping from that manifold, and each circuit covers something like 100 square feet. So the pipe starts from the supply manifold, goes around, and again terminates into the return manifold. So this is a manifold box. It has got its own isolating walls. It can have a air vents. It can have a drain walls. It can have a temperature gauges. Then flow meters. All the things are accommodated into a manifold box. And then we come to the control system. A control system is the heart of this particular radiant system, because the radiant system is maintaining the dew point temperature. It keeps on monitoring what is the dew point temperature in that particular area, and based on that dew point temperature, it gives a signal. It gives a signal to this three-way valve, so that the temperature which is going to the ceiling should always be, the water temperature is going to the ceiling should be always higher in the dew point temperature in that area. Why? Because if you allow this surface to cool below the dew point temperature, then there will be a condensation in this area. So to avoid that, we have a control system which keeps on monitoring the dew point temperature in that area, and based on dew point temperature, it decides what is the water temperature, what temperature water has to flow into the radiant system. So that is the reason we call it as the heart of the particular system. Otherwise, all the other features are very easy to install and maintain. So these are the components of the radiant system. Generally, the pipes which are used for inside the for the either above the slab or inside the slab, they are the PEX piping. It's a polyethylene cross-linked pipes which can be embedded in the slab or the screen. Cold water flows through these pipes, and these pipes conduct to the surrounding slab or the screen, making it a cold surface. Now, people would ask the question, why PEX pipe? Why not copper pipe? The PEX pipe, the conductivity is much lower compared to either any MS pipe or copper pipe. But when we want to embed a pipe inside a slab or inside a screen, you cannot go for a metal pipe. You cannot have a copper pipe, because copper pipe would have a lot of joints, and there are chances of any leakages in that pipe. So PEX pipe, even though it is lower in the thermal conductivity, but it has got a high tensile strength. It can bend 5 times the diameter of that particular pipe, and it can sustain the temperatures of -20 degrees C to 95 degrees C, and it can withstand the pressures of 10 bar. So that is the reason the PEX pipes are very commonly used in the radiant technology. Now, PEX pipes are also used for the distribution of the potable water in European countries. Now, European countries, the temperatures go down below to -0 and all that degree. So when they used to use the metal pipes, the pipes used to burst because of the ice formation inside the pipe. Now they have started using the PEX pipe, so the ice formation problem is resolved, and they do the distribution of potable water with the PEX pipe. The PEX pipes are also commonly used in the plumbing applications also. PEX pipes have an anti-oxygen barrier. Now, anti-oxygen barrier, it doesn't allow the oxygen to penetrate through its surface to the water inside the pipe. So when the oxygen doesn't interact with the water, so scale formation doesn't happen, because scale formation happens only when the oxygen interacts with the water. So scale formation problems are also avoided. Manifold is like a switchboard. It is like a main DB. From there, all the distribution takes place. The same way from the manifold, you take out the circuit, and each circuit taking a length of 100 meters and again terminating into that manifold box and covering the area of 100. So one manifold box generally has a 12 manifolds, and it caters to something like 1200 square feet of the area. Then the controls, as I mentioned, controls are required to ensure that the surface temperature is always above the dew point temperature of the surrounding area, so that the condensation does not occur. Text pipes are available in different sizes. It starts from 9 mm, 16 mm, 20 mm. We have got 32 mm, 40 mm also. But generally, when we use in a radiant system, 9, 16, and 20 are normally used. 9 mm is used in a ceiling, gypsum ceiling, where the pipes are embedded in the gypsum ceiling, and those gypsum panels are used as a ceiling. The 16 mm is used for the underfloor. I'll come to what is underfloor system inside the slab, so that it occupies less area inside the slab. So 16 mm, 20 mm are the common use pipes inside the either in the underfloor or into the inside the slab. So when you do 9 mm pipe, the pitch is something like 50 mm. That is the distance between the two pipes is 50 mm. If you have a 16 mm pipe, the pitch, that is the distance between the two pipes, is 100 mm. But when you have 20 mm pipe, the distance between the two pipes is 150 mm. Then there are methods of doing: linear method, reticular method. As I said, I explained to you what is the pitch, that is the distance between the two adjacent pipes. Now, how many slides now? Now, coming to the reagent cooling system concept. As you can see in the slide, it can be done above the floor. If this is the slab, which is the already existing building you have, and the below floor does not belong to you, then you put an insulation above the slab. Then you put a wire mesh or a track from that insulation, and then you install the pipe, and these are covered inside the screed, concrete screed, and above your finish. That is, it can be a carpet, it can be wooden flooring, it can be a marble, it can be tile, whatever you want. Again, the capacities are worked out. What is the finish on that? What is the capacity you will get from the floor is decided. So there is a formula available for that. That all depending upon what is the thickness of the screed, what is the pipe diameter, what is the surface. Based on that, you can work out what is the capacity you will get it from the floor when you install a text pipe inside the underfloor, and what is the capacity generally available. So to give you an example, when we do this sort of a system, we get something like 50 watts per square meter cooling capacity, with the inside room temperature to be maintained at something like 24 to 25 degrees C. Right? Now coming to the ceiling. Now above floor does not belong to you, and you want to do a radiant system, then there is an insulation below the slab, and then you have a sort of a gypsum or something like that, wet gypsum, in which you can embed this pipe, and this is how you can create this cold surface. This is a cold surface, this is cold. There are ready-made panels also available, in which the pipes are already embedded gypsum panels, which you can stick it above the insulation, and then circulate the cold water through this pipe and generate cold surface over here. It can be used for cooling as well as for the heating. Same for the floor also, it can be used for the cooling as well as for the heating. Same thing could be applied to a wall. This is the wall. You make an insulation on that, and on that wall you put the panels. Ready-made panels are available, in which you stick this, and the pipes are already arranged on that panel. PEX pipe or copper pipes are available, which are ready-made tunnels are there, through which the water is circulated and it creates a cold surface of the on the wall. Now it can be a insulation if you don't have a sufficient space above the slab, then you can recess it and install the pipe like this. Same way for the ceiling, same way for the thing. Now this is the example of the radiant cooling which is being installed, and already operational at IIT building, hostel buildings in Hyderabad. Here you can see this is one building. This is one building. Each building is having 4 clusters. We call this one as a one cluster. Each cluster is something like 6 floors. Each cluster is having 6 floors, and each floor is having 8 rooms. Now here the system which has been done is a underfloor as well as the. So you see, this is the real pictures of that particular site where the pipes are laid over here on the floor. It has been insulated. On the insulation, these are the black color what you see is the track, and on the track the pipes are laid. So the track ensures that the distance between the two pipes, what we call it, there's a pitch between the two pipes is maintained. On the wire mesh also you can have a grid of 100 mm, 150 mm, and then tie that pipe to that wire mesh so that you can have a proper distance between the two pipes. So this is known as a underflow system where the pipes are laid above the slab. So this is the slab. On the slab the insulation is laid. On the insulation the polythene sheet is laid so that the moisture when we pour a concrete on that does not go to the slab. So on the insulation polythene sheet is laid. On the polythene sheet we have a track, black track, and on that track the pipes are laid. And this method is known as a linear method where the pipes go or it goes around. So if you see, this is a supply pipe which goes around, covers the room, and again it comes out of the room. So if you look at this particular, so this is the one floor. Here all the manifold, there are 8 rooms. Each room is 100 square feet. So we have something like 8 circuits on one floor for the underflow system. The manifold box is installed in this toilet, and the pipe here you can see this is the manifold box here, and the pipe is supplied over here. Water is supplied to this, and the return water comes back to the manifold from again back to the manifold. Like this, each floor is having a manifold box on inside the toilet here. So that is how the distribution of the water is done. Same is the followed for the. If you look this picture, this is the ceiling. The ceiling also has a manifold box like this for the distribution, and same way as the floor, it has been done with the ceiling. The insulation is installed, then there is a framework which is done. On that framework, the pipes are installed, and on this now the wet gypsum is installed. The finish is a gypsum. So the pipes get embedded in the gypsum, and on the floor they get embedded into the concrete. So that is how the surfaces are created. Cold surfaces are created. Now this is another picture from another site where you can see the wire mesh and the pipes are tied to the wire mesh, and this is known as a reticular method. Here the pipe goes inside and again it comes back like the way it has gone inside. So here alternate pipe, one is a supply pipe, one is a return pipe. So the one pipe has gone inside and again it is coming out. So this method gives you a uniform surface temperature. While in this, sorry, I'm just
Mr. Shrikant, can we conduct a short poll right now? Mr.
Yeah,
Shrikant?
I think I don't have the count of the slide. How many? Yeah, we can. We can.
Yeah.
We can.
अरे बोलो ना सर, क्या कर रहे हो? आओ ना पिक्चर में, चालू तो कर दिया फोन। हेलो। अरे
हेलो,
फोन चालू करा, बोलो ना।
So poll
मैं चालू करूँ?
poll is going on, sir. Okay, sir. So poll have a 76% rated for the same speed. So we can go ahead with the same speed. Okay, sir. You can continue now.
Okay. Thank you. I think okay. Mhm.
Sir, you can continue.
Yeah, I'm continuing. This it is a bit taking time on the to move the slide. Yeah. Now this is a picture of the site where the pipes have been embedded inside the slab. So you can see that the structure has been laid. There is shuttering has been done. On the shuttering, there is a wire mesh. On the wire mesh, the pipes are laid, and on that the steel bars are laid. And then all this will be embedded in concreting will be done on this. So if you look at it, this is a picture of the manifold box. This is a manifold box over here. This is a manifold box. You can see the picture over here. The pipes from all these are connected. So there is different manifold boxes depending on the areas, and supply and return boxes pipes are connected to this manifold. Now this manifold, what we do, we pressurize this before the concreting is done. Before the concreting, 24 hours before the concreting, this complete system is pressurized. The pressure which is at 7 bars is maintained in the system, complete system, and it is allowed to remain there for 24 hours before the concreting. Then if there is no pressure drop observed, because there are pressure gauges, everything over here, it is observed. If there is no pressure drop in that, then the concreting is allowed to be done, and the pressure is maintained throughout the concreting. And after the concreting also the pressure is maintained. And if there is no pressure drop observed, then this manifold box is again taken out. So you can see that before the concreting, this is the picture, and after the concreting, this is the picture after the concreting of the slab has been done. Now, in earlier slide, I just want to go to earlier slide where I want to explain about the types of slabs which we have done it in the 3D. Now, this is a picture of a PT slab also. So this pipe can be made in a, if there is a PT slab there, we have done it in the PT slab also. So then be laid in a PT slab. A normal casting also can be done with the radiant. So only thing when we do the radiant system in a slab, then you are having effect on both the sides. That is, you are having effect upwards also above the slab from the floor as well as below the slab. That is from the ceiling of the below floor. So, but if you construct a false ceiling below the slab, then you are losing the effect which is coming from the ceiling. So when we do install a pipe inside the slab, then it should be ensured that we don't have any false ceiling below the slab. So if you are planning to have a false ceiling, then the slab has to be insulated from the bottom so that you don't lose the effect downward, which is not being utilized because the false ceiling is going to block all the electromagnetic waves which are going to be coming down from the ceiling. Another thing which I missed out was that when you do a radiant cooling, you get more effect when you do it from the ceiling, and you get a less effect when you do it from the floor. Because when you do, there is a air, definitely air inside in any space. So if the surface is cold, if you're doing it from the floor, after some time, the cold air will start settling down, and it will reduce the temperature difference between the floor and the surrounding surface, surrounding area, and it will reduce the capacity. And that is the reason when we do it from the floor, you get a capacity of something like 45 to 50 watts per square meter. But the same thing you do it from the ceiling. The capacity is, if we are having a gypsum ceiling, you get something like 65 to 70 watts per square meter. If you are doing a metallic ceiling, it is a 90 to 95 watts per square meter. So because when we do it from the ceiling, it is always the cold air will come down and it will be replaced by hot air. So there will be always a higher temperature difference between the ceiling cold surface and the air which is surrounding that particular ceiling. So that's the reason you get more capacity when you do it from the ceiling, and then what you get it from. And it is reversed when you do it for the heating. In heating, you get more capacity when you do it from the floor, and you get less capacity from the ceiling. These are now, this is another option of doing it from the wall. So these are the wall panels, and these are the pipes. These are aluminum panels. On that, these pipes are routed, and through this pipes, cold water is circulated, and then this complete thing is either covered by a gypsum, it can be covered by mud, it can be covered by a concrete, so that your pipes are in totally contact with the whatever you are covering with. So when the cold water is circulated through the pipe, the surface becomes cold or hot. This is one of the project pictures from a Leh hotel building, where these pipes are laid. You can see over here, this is bed position. Below the bed, the system has been laid. This is the wall which is next to the bed. These two walls are next to the bed, where the heating system is installed. And then the complete room is also covered up with this wall panel. So it can be, same thing can be done for the ceiling also. Same panels, you can have your normal, whatever the structure you need for your gypsum ceiling. Same structure, on that same structure you can install these panels which are shown on the wall, can be installed, and the pipes can be laid on this panel, and you can circle, and then these panels are covered by your standard gypsum sheet, which are ensure that there is no air gap between those aluminum panels and the gypsum sheet. It's in fully contact with that aluminum sheet, so that the coldness of that aluminum sheet will be transferred to the gypsum sheet, and you will generate a cold surface. So this is the way it can be done. You have this your normal structure which is required for your gypsum ceiling. These panels are laid over that structure, and then the pipes are routed through this panels, and then it is covered by a gypsum sheet, and you get a cold surface. Now we go to the next is what is the difference between the air conditioning, conventional air conditioning, and radiant cooling surface. I think everybody who is attending from the air conditioning field, they know that cold air is supplied in area to be maintained, air conditioned, to remove the heat from the area. We are supplying the cold air into that area which is to be air conditioned to remove the heat from that area. While in the radiant, you generate a cold surface. The cold surface can be a slab, it could be a wall, it could be a ceiling, which is lower than the surface temperature is lower than what is the temperature to be maintained in that particular area. The other difference is the air supplied in a conventional air conditioning. We generally, the air leaving from the unit, evaporative unit, is something like 12 to 15 degrees C, right? Now in radiant, the surface temperature depends upon the room, depends upon the dew point temperature inside the room, so that there is no condensation in that particular area. This is one of the critical points in the radiant cooling, that my surface temperature has to be higher than the dew point temperature in that room. Now you take an example of a glass of water, where the cold water is inside that glass, and if that area is not air conditioned, what will happen? You will have a condensation on that particular surface of that glass, and that condensation is because the dew point temperature of the surface of that glass is lower than the dew point temperature of the air in that particular area. That is the reason that air is getting condensed on the surface of that glass. Similar principle we are applying for the radiant cooling. We are generating a cold surface. Now, my cold surface should not be lower than the dew point temperature. Otherwise, there will be condensation. If my floor is lower than the dew point temperature, there will be the floor will be wet. And if the ceiling is lower, then the water will start falling from the ceiling. So the control system ensures that my surface temperature is always higher than the dew point temperature. So there is a difference between the conventional and the radiant system. The water temperature is circulated. If you take an example, chilled water system, I have taken an example of chilled water because in radiant also we are circulating a chilled water. That's the reason I have taken an example of a chilled water system. In water system, our water temperature are 7 degrees, surface 7.22 and 12.8 is the return water temperature. While in the radiant, generally we select the chiller, which is 12 to 15 degrees C supply and 16 to 19 degrees C. Now, why I have selected 12 to 15 degrees C? Because when we have a combination of conventional and the radiant system, then if you already taken care of the layout in that particular room with a conventional system, your dew point temperature goes below something like 12 degrees C. So if you are maintaining a temperature of say 54 degrees C and say RH of 60% is plotted on the psychrometric chart, then your dew point temperature would be somewhere near 12 degrees C. So that is the reason the water which is to be circulated in the, if there is a combination of conventional and the radiant system, then I can lower the water temperature which is circulated in the slab or in the underfloor system or in the ceiling and all that, so that my surface temperatures are lower. So that is the reason we can select a chiller which is having 12 degrees C, 12 to 15 degrees supply and return of 16 to 19 degrees C. So this is the difference you can see here. It is 7, here it is 12. So this is the compressor which has to do more work to generate the cold water. Over here, the compressor has to do less work to generate 12 degrees C temperature. So definitely there is going to be a saving in my work in my chiller operation over here. Next is the density of the air compared to water. It is inefficient in transporting the cooling effect. Water is 3,500 times more efficient compared to air transporting the energy. You can see now just see the example of air conditioning. If you are sitting in an air conditioning area and electricity goes off, if something goes wrong with the unit, within 5 minutes you start feeling uncomfortable. In that, if you are not opened any window or anything, the space becomes uncomfortable because the heat carrying capacity of the air is very low. But if it's the same thing, same space, if you are having it a radiant surface, that radiant surface will remain cold for at least another 1.5 hour, half hour or 1 hour, and the body can still reject the heat through those surfaces and you will feel comfortable. We have done a project where we have one space done with the conventional air conditioning and other space done with the combination of air conditioning as well as the radiant system, where when the power failure happens, the people sitting in the conventional air conditioning system are uncomfortable, while the people who are sitting in the combination of radiant as well as the conventional can comfortably sit in that place for at least 1.5 or 2 hours over there. And this is a really observed thing. It is not something I'm trying to sell something over here. Okay, now coming to that, now another example of the how radiant or water is efficient compared to the air. Now, if you have a building which is having a glass right from the floor to the ceiling, and there is a lot of sun rays coming through that glass and hitting your surface of that particular floor. Now, if it is only done with a conventional air conditioning, what would happen? Because of the sun rays coming inside that solar again, it would heat up your floor and it would add to your heat load in that particular area, and that you need to cover it up with their supplying more air in that area. So that generally when we do a air conditioning design, the periphery area which is having glass, we supply more air in that area than the inside part of it. So if it is only conventional air conditioning, you need to supply more air to overcome the high temperature because of the sun rays hitting the floor. Now, if the same floor is done with a radiant system, what would happen? The surface would be cold and there is water continuously flowing through the pipes, and that heat would be picked up by the water which is in the pipes and taken it back, so that your floor doesn't heat up. And when the floor doesn't heat up, it doesn't add to your heat load in that particular area. So this is also another way when you do combination of conventional and radiant, this would help you in reducing your heat load in that particular area. Now coming to the how you save the power with the compared to the conventional when you do radiant cooling system. Compressor, when you generate a 7 degree C, the compressor has to do more work to do 7 degree C, while it is more efficient to achieve 15 degree C temperature. If you do a selection of a chiller, water-cooled chiller with a 7 degree C for the same capacity, and you compare the IPLB and all that, generally the conventional 7 degree would consume something like nowadays efficient chillers are available 0.6, 0.7 kilowatts per ton. Now the radiant, if it's operating at say 15 degrees C, I'm talking about a water-cooled chiller, then at full load it would consume something like 0.45 kilowatts per ton. So you can see the difference in the power which is saved, even though the radiant is not catering to your 100% load, but even if it is catering to something like 30% of your load, the energy saving what you would have compared to your conventional would be a sizable. We'll come to the energy saving. We have done a case study on that, which I would share with you, and you can see how we are saving the energy. As air cooled and dehumidifier, it can be used in conventional air conditioning. If it's a coastal area where you need to take care of the latent load, conventional air conditioning system is required. It is a must. But in the dry places like in the desert areas and all that, where the major load is from the sensible load, then radiant cooling system is a very good system. Like Rajasthan and all that, Pune, Hyderabad and all this, it's a dry places, then this could be a very good system, and it can be done in combination with a conventional system. Now, this is generally what is the power saving with the radiant system. Now, conventional system, if you look at it, conventional system, the fan motor is something like 38%, load from the light say 18 to 19%, air transport load is 9.3%, and other loads is 34.4%. While in the radiant system, the other loads are 34.4%, it remains the same. While the air load, then the load from the light gets reduced, and the fan motor, and this we will check in our case study what we have done, how it can be saved. Now this is a case study for one of the projects which has been executed, where the radiant system has been installed, and the loads of that particular building are as mentioned, the area to be air conditioned is something like 28,855 square feet. Almost 29,000 square feet. The sensible load calculated is 123.2 tons, and the latent is something like 41.8 tons. The dehumidified CFM, which has been worked out, is something like 58,280 CFM. Now, we have installed a radiant cooling system over there, which is a floor and the ceiling, the sensible load which will be catered depending about, as I mentioned, about 40 watts, 40 to 45 watts from the floor and 65 to 70 watts from the ceiling. Based on those calculations, the load which can be catered by the radiant cooling floor and the ceiling is something like 80 TR. Now, this 80 TR gets deducted if it's a combination of conventional and the radiant, because here the radiant is only catering to 80 tons. So I can't have a standalone radiant system. So this 80 tons get deducted from the 23.2 TR. So the balance load which is to be catered by is 85 TR. So it's the latent plus balance of the sensible load. So it becomes 85. And based on the balance sensible load, the dehumidified PFM for the balance 43.2 TR works out to something like 17,280 PFM. Now, power required when we are doing only conventional, it is something like for the chiller capacity, for the chiller, which are selected 0.8 kilowatts per ton, is something like 132 kilowatts. The AHU motors and the static pressure of say 3 inches, the motor kilowatt is something like 35 kilowatts. So now power required for the radiant system. Now power, if it is a combination of radiant as well as conventional, the water cooled chiller would be conventional would be 83.2 into 0.8 would be 66.6 kilowatt. Now when you for the radiant a separate chiller is 80 tons into 0.45 kilowatts, so it is 36 kilowatts. So the total when we do combination of conventional as well as the radiant, then it is 66 plus 36 is 102 kilowatts. So saving compared to the only conventional, that is 132 minus is something like 29.4 kilowatts. Now power required for 48 as we saw is 35 kilowatts. This can be worked out based on there is an equation for that, how it can be worked out. So it's 35 kilowatts. The same way for this PFM, the power required is something like 10 kilowatts. So the saving in AHU power, we know in air conditioning, if you don't have a VFDs and all that, a VFD and VFD box and all that, then even though the temperature is achieved, the compressor cuts off, but your fan keeps on running continuously. So if your fan is running continuously, it is consuming a huge power, which is a huge component over here, 35 kilowatts. So when we do a combination of radiant as well as the conventional, then the power saving is something like of 25 kilowatts. So power saving due to chiller is 29.4, power due to fan is 25 kilowatts. So total saving is 54.5 kilowatts. So it's almost 32% is the saving in the power. So I come to my end of the presentation. So we can open out on the further any questions to be asked on that.
Sir, thank you for such a wonderful detailing about radiant cooling. So one of requests is, can you again elaborate the heat load calculation for radiant cooling?
Only for the radiant cooling?
Yes, sir. How we will consider and calculate the radiant load from our heat load?
Okay. Now, I don't have the slides for that, but we should do the heat load as we do it for our normal any building, right? We will work out the sensible load and we will work out the latent, right? Our heat load sheet will give us the sensible load and the latent load. Now as in this case study, the sensible load is something like 123.2 TR, while the latent load is 41. This is based on the heat load calculations what we had done. And based on the sensible load, we have worked out the air quantity of 58,280. Now, depending upon what is the area available for me to do the radiant cooling, right? Radiant cooling. Say if it's the underfloor and the ceiling, based on that, say if it is 100 square feet or 100 square meter. So if I'm doing it from the floor, hello, hello,
Yes.
yes, we are doing it from the
You're
floor.
audible.
So yeah, based on the what is the surface area available to me and what type of system I have, I'm doing the underfloor. Generally, I get something like 45 to 50 watts per square meter. 45 to 50 watts per square meter from the floor. And if I am doing a ceiling, if it's a gypsum ceiling or a metallic ceiling, I get something like, if it's a gypsum, I get something like 65 watts per square meter. But if it's a metallic ceiling, I get still higher, say 90 watts per square meter. Assuming that I'm maintaining a room temperature of say 24 to 25 degrees C in that particular area. So based on that, what is the surface area which has been done with the reagent? Based on that, we multiply for the floor, we multiply by 40 watts per square meter. And from that, we work out what is the capacity I'm getting. So that watts I convert it into ton. Same thing I've done it for the ceiling. And based on that, the what total sensible load we can cater is been worked out as ATTR over here. And this ATTR has been deducted from the sensible load from the of the conventional system, because my conventional system has to be downsized, because this 41.8 ton I cannot cater with the radiant, so it has to be done with the conventional, while the balance from this 123.3 and the 41.8 has to be catered by the conventional system.
Okay, sir. What would be the speed of what would be the water velocity in PX5?
Water velocities are very less. Now, generally, the water quantity which is circulated, water flow rate inside the pipe, in the fixed pipe, if it's a 16 mm pipe, the water flow rate is generally 165 to 170 liters per hour is the flow rate maintained in that, and the pressure drops are not more than 1 meter in one circuit. While if you go to a 20 mm pipe, then the water flow rates are generally 250 liters to 260 liters per hour. See, we don't want to increase the velocity in the water. So based on this flow rate, we can work out the velocity. The reason for the low flow rates is that you need to have a low velocity water flowing through that pipe. So the water should remain in that circuit. Otherwise, the water be, because the delta T in the radiant system, it is not like the conventional air conditioning system. The T is maximum 3 degrees, maximum to maximum is 4 degrees. Whatever generally what we have observed is 3 degrees C is the delta T between the inlet and the outlet of any circuit. So if I am supplying a 15 degree water to the one circuit, then the return water is generally 18 degrees C. If it is 16, it is 19. So that is the reason we don't increase the velocity of the water in the pipe. Hello? Yeah.
Okay, sir. Another question from Mr. KK Vijay. What is the power saving compared to conventional air conditioning system, and what will be the payback for this radiant cooling system?
Yeah. As I've done in my case study, generally what we have observed is with the Indian climate. See, our Indian climates are we are in a high temperature, high humid area. We have a latent load also. We have a sensible load also. So radiant system is not a standalone system unless you say that 30 degrees C or 28 degrees C is acceptable temperature to me. Like in IIT Hyderabad, those hostel buildings are totally radiant systems. There is no conventional air conditioning system over there, and the temperature maintained over there is 30 plus minus 2 degrees C is the temperature being maintained over there with no control over the RH. They can open the windows. There is a ceiling over there. So that is the way of doing it. Then you can save a lot of energy. But when you're comparing it with a conventional air conditioning system, in any conventional air conditioning system, the radiant system generally takes away the 50% of the principal load. So when you compare the conventional with the radiant, I would say conservatively 50% is a saving compared to the conventional air conditioning system. That is when I talk about the temperature of 24 degrees to 25 degrees. But if you go for a higher temperature, then obviously your load would come down and the radiant would give more capacity. So the share of the radiant would be more compared to the conventional air conditioning. You would save more energy in that case. Now coming to the payback period is generally 3 to 6 years is the best period, what we have observed.
Okay, sir. Sir, another question from Mr. Rabin Malakar. What would be the capex difference between conventional chilled water system and the radiant cooling system? If we combine this radiant with a conventional system, then what would be the additional cost we have to pay?
Yeah. And additional cost, what we have observed, the additional cost is something like 30% higher than the conventional system for the same capacity. Now there are ways of doing it. Now, if you are doing it inside the slab, right? If you are doing it inside the slab, then it is a most economical system. What the radiant can do, because you get the effect upward also, you get the effect downward also. But if you are doing only underfloor, then what happens is the effect is only above the floor, means from the floor. So when you do it from the floor, your capacity is less compared to getting it from the ceiling. So when you do it, you put the pipe inside the slab, then you get a effect downward from the slab and upward from the slab. So with the same cost, you are having more capacity getting from that. But if you are doing it only above the floor, then you are getting less capacity. But the cost of the pipe remains the same. Understand? So that is how the difference occurs. So when you do that is the reason the capex. Now coming to the capex compared to the conventional system, if I am doing only with the radiant, only with the underfloor, my capex is something like 30% higher compared to the conventional air conditioning system. But if I am doing from the slab, it would be lower than the only doing it from the floor. There are again methods of doing it. You can use the return water temperature from the conventional chiller and save on the capex of the for the chiller or the radiant also. There are different ways of doing the system.
Okay, sir. So do you have complete some retrofit of radiant cooling in existing any existing building?
Existing, we have done quite an installation. We have not done the rate, but we have done the combinations of conventional and the radiant, and that too in the coastal areas like Mumbai, it has been done. So you can call it as retrofit, because the floor, only one floor is occupied, where the floor below doesn't belong to that person and floor above doesn't belong to that person. Only that floor belongs to that person, and the combination of the underfloor as well as the ceiling has been done over there. And we see, and that one office of something like 7,000 square feet, it is in Mumbai, where the underfloor and the ceiling has been done, and next office of the same size has been done only with the conventional air conditioning. It is a different client. The power difference, the power bill of these two clients is a huge difference. They are paying 50% more power than what these people are paying, which are having a combination of conventional and the radiant system.
Okay, sir. So just like if I have we have some commercial building having multiple floors with an existing chiller, so we can do floor-wise radiant cooling additional to the conventional air conditioning. So we can get around 50% less bill.
You can 50% is a bit on the higher side. To be conservative, yes, 30 to 40% definitely will achieve that reduction in the bill. It depends upon, it again depends upon what type of system you are doing, because if you do a ceiling, ceiling compared to the floor or the underfloor system or inside the slab, the cost is higher compared to the underfloor and the inside the slab side. So the capex, when you start comparing the capex and the power saving and all that, definitely there is this. And again it depends upon how much area we are making it available for the radiant system. More the area available, more the capacity you will get from the radiant system.
Okay. So, sir, how this we can regulate these water inlet and outlet?
Yeah,
If some area is occupied or non-occupied?
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can put a thermostat for each area. You can, for one manifold, one manifold can become like your one FCU. It can become a one FCU for that particular area. If it's a common, say, one big, like we have done the industrial areas, we have done it, where each manifold, say 1200 square feet, is one manifold box which is having its own control circuit in that. It has got its own control, it has its own mixing wall and all that. So if that particular area is not prepared, you can switch out that particular area.
And these valves can be manifold connected to as well as to BMS also.
Yeah, it can be. We are having a DCC controllers in that. You have a DCC controller which can communicate with the BMS.
Okay. So, sir,
or you can also have a centralized control system. Also, you can have a thermostat and RF sensors in all the areas. That and one centralized controller, it keeps on averaging it keeps on monitoring what is the temperature and RH in all the areas and works out the dew point temperature and looks at the worst dew point temperature, and based on the worst dew point temperature, if there is only one single three-way mixing wall, and based on that worst dew point temperature, it decides how much the three-way mixing wall has to open and allow, how much cold water has to be allowed in that area in the complete. But it becomes the one worst area decides the temperature for all the areas. But if you have a decentralized, you can have a controller for each area also.
Okay, sir, what would be the difference in cooling performance rate? Just like if conventional AC can chill the room in 15 minutes. So how is the radiant cooling difference in performance?
Radiant cooling, the best advantage of the radiant cooling, say if it's a slab, the slab would take at least, if you want to occupy that place, you should start half an hour before or 1 hour before you want to occupy that space. But the advantage with that is it's a uniform cooling. You can sit in any place you want, you will have uniform cooling over there. Compared to the conventional air conditioning, wherever there is a supply diffuser, that person feels cold. When there is later air diffuser, that person feels hot. It's an uneven distribution of air. If the distribution is not done correctly, then it's the uneven distribution of coldness in that particular room with the conventional. But with the radiant, you have a uniform cooling, and the comfort levels are like the floor is cold, and if a person is sitting with his feet on the floor, that body starts rejecting the heat directly to that floor, and you feel comfortable. So this is the difference between the conventional and the radiant. Another thing, as I said earlier, if your air conditioning system switches off, then you start feeling uncomfortable within 5 minutes. But if you compare it with the radiant, the floor remains cold. Storage of it is like an ice slab at a temperature of 20 degrees C. The more the thickness of the slab, more it will store the energy in that particular slab. And when the temperature starts going up, it will start giving more capacity from that slab. So when the power is off, it will be more comfortable compared to the conventional air conditioning. I think feeling is believing. That is what we call it. Feeling and believing. You should visit a place which has been done with a radiant cooling system. Sit in that place for 1 hour, 2 hours, and then decide what, because the temperature or the comfort is it differs from person to person. So the person has to go and sit in that place and then decide whether it's comfortable or not.
Okay, sir, one of the what is the major disadvantage of this radiant cooling system?
One of the major disadvantages is it does not remove the latent heat. Another major thing is that it it needs a proper control system. If you don't have a proper control system, then the chances of latent condensation are there. And another disadvantage is that even if you want to use it as a standalone, if you want to have maintain a temperature of say 28 degrees C, 30 degrees C in a drier climates, then it can be used in drier climates, but it cannot be used in the coastal areas where the humidity levels are higher. So these are the disadvantages of that. And another thing, with our heat loads, higher heat loads, we are in a hot and humid area, India. If you compare it with Europe, they don't need separate systems for the maintaining the temperature. They operate with the radiant system only. They operate during summer as well with in the winter. While in India, with our temperature high, humidity levels high, we need to have a combination of conventional as well as the heat.
Sir, the major question what we received, how much is the cost per TR and capex per square feet basis, what we considered when
the cost per TR, it is not cost. Generally, the radiant cost is not done in terms of now when we say radiant cost is from the manifold box which is having manifolds in that. Manifold, whatever the walls required for that, and the PEX pipe, which is PEX pipe, tracks and insulation, polythene sheet and all that. So that cost, when you I'm doing the underflow system, is something like 250 rupees per. It is decided in square feet. It is not decided in the ton. So it is 250 rupees per square feet. But if you are doing inside the slab only, where I don't need any insulation or anything like that, then it is something like 200 rupees per square feet. That is the costing.
Okay. So, sir, can we add fresh air system in this radiant cooling?
Yeah, you can have a dedicated. You can have a dedicated outdoor air system. Like I mentioned I showed the combination of radiant and the combination of radiant. To look at it, it can be generally in the radiant system. What they do, they have a combination of conventional system is dedicated outdoor air system with a heat recovery. So you supply what is the pressure required. You calculate what is the humidity by Cm. You calculate what is the pressure requirement over there, and whichever is higher, that air is supplied as a dedicated outdoor air in that particular area with a heat recovery system over there. So if you look at the Infosys building in Hyderabad, they don't have the conventional system is dedicated outdoor air system in a combination with the radiant system over there. And you can have a conventional system with a recirculation air, and you can add a pressure to the conventional system.
Can we achieve 18 degree or 20 degree temperature with radiant cooling if we place this system in some hotels?
No, sir. Now if I want to achieve 18 degrees C temperature, my floor temperature has to be somewhere near 10 degrees C, right? So what is the advantage? Then the water temperature becomes 7 degrees C, right? Now, if 7 degrees C is the water temperature I have to circulate, then why am I doing all this thing? I might as well go for the conventional air conditioning system. No, I am not saving any power. Where am I saving power? If I am circulating for 15 degrees C, that is where I am saving the power. But if I am circulating a water of 7 degrees C, then I am not achieving any advantage over here. Then I might as well go for conventional. And as I mentioned earlier, the radiant cooling system you should utilize it where with a high temperature. You should design your system. You should first thing is you reduce the dark area. You should use the insulated block. Reduce the solar load. Reduce the solar load as much as possible. load and hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, what is the maintenance we required in a radiant cooling system? Any preventive maintenance?
Maintenance is, see, the water quality should be the same as what you maintain in a chilled water system. There are no moving parts inside the pipe. So manifold box is placed, which is also not a moving. Once you have balanced the system, you set the system. There is no balancing or further anything required on that. There are balls and all that in the manifold box. So maintenance is not on the radiant part. It is only on the chiller or a pump which are external. So that is the only maintenance which is same to as what is required in the convention system. Convention system you need to do high side as well as the low side. While in the radiant only you need to do is the high side maintenance.
There are not many questions we have, so we will request attendees to have a one-to-one conversation with sir. So can you show your last slide, your contact details?
Yeah.
Sir, the last question what I would like to ask from RK Patel. Can we have joint of PAX PX pipe, and if found any leakage in system?
Yeah. The good question. Nobody asked it. Here, see, if it were what we are doing is we are doing the pipe which is installed is a continuous pipe. We are not installing any joint in that pipe. It is generally the pipe available in rows of 500 meters, 200 meters, and each circuit is not more than 100 to 120 meters. So, so there is no joint. Now, how can any now before casting the slab or before casting the floor, you are putting a pressure in that pipe, maintaining the operating pressures are not more than 1 bar, but we are putting a pressure of 7 bars in that system. And we are observing that there is no pressure drop, and then only the concreting is done. Now, if any damage happens, then you can locate that damage with a thermographic camera. And the water, because there is cold water, and you go to the thermographic camera, you will find out the blue spot in that particular area, and thermographic camera will show you which circuit has been punctured. Now, either when you are doing underfloor, you can remove the screed and put a coupling over there, and again cover it up with the concrete, and you can again start the system. But if it is inside the slab, and that particular portion which has been punctured, now puncture can happen only if somebody wants to puncture it and do it intentionally, then the damage can happen. Otherwise, the damage cannot happen because you have tested it, and the pipe, when you put it inside the slab, it is not on the surface. It is something like 50 mm to 60 mm above below the floor. So somebody has put a rail of something like 100 into the pipe. In the pipes are very strong. It cannot be punctured that easily. A person of 100 kg can stand on the pipe. With the safety shoes, they can stand on the pipe and nothing can happen. So, but if any damage has occurred, coupling is one of the solutions. If that particular circuit is not acceptable, then you can switch that particular circuit from the manifold box. So it stops circulating the water to that particular circuit, so that you are losing that much effect from that particular manifold box. That is the way of doing it.
Okay, sir. I think question and we have lot of questions. So, sir, our attendees will contact you directly. You already shared the name of Mr. Natik Shah for further queries. So, I would like to invite Mr. Kapil Jain, sir, our upcoming president for Indore chapter, for a vote of thanks. Kapil sir? till that time, Kapil sir will on the board. Let have few question also. Sir, is it this system is easier as conventional system in terms of installation and execution?
Yeah, it is much simpler. You don't need a skilled labor for all those things. So it can be easily done. Generally, these systems are installed by our plumbers. Plumbing team does the installation of this text pipe. So compared to conventional, it is easier to install. Easy to handle, lightweight, it can be installed.
Okay. So, sir, do we have to provide any drainage system for condensation in pipe?
No, there is no condensation on the system, no. So whatever happens, the condensation doesn't occur. So there is no condensate rate required. We are not catering to the latent flow. So it has to be. So there is no drainage required. Only drain. In a manifold box, the drain points of the drain pipes are provided in case you want to drain that particular circuit or particular manifold box. Then only the drain is required, and that's already made it available inside the manifold box.
Okay, so sir, do we, just like in Indore we have a dry climate, so can we add a radiant cooling plus evaporative cooling?
No, because what happens when you do evaporative cooling? Yeah, when you are doing evaporative cooling, you are adding a moisture to that, right? So when you are adding a moisture, you are increasing the dew point temperature in that particular area. So combination doesn't help in that case. Evaporative cooling and radiant cooling, because you are adding a moisture, you are creating a coastal area over there. You are increasing the humidity in that area. So my dew point temperature increases. When the dew point temperature increases, my water temperature just to be circulated will be at a higher temperature. It has to increase. So I'll get a less effect from the.
Okay, sir. Another question from Manu Agrawal. Do we need two chillers, one for the lower temperature for conventional air conditioning, and second for high temperature for radiant cooling?
Yeah, it is ideally if it is. See, it depends upon what is the area which you are doing with the radiant system. If water requirement is sizable, then it is advisable to have a separate chiller for the conventional and the radiant. You can have a combination. If you have if your total load is at 200 tons, and if you are having a chiller of say 100 tons and one standby chiller, so instead of standby chiller, you can have one radiant chiller operating at a higher water temperature. So if any of your conventional chiller breaks down, you can switch this radiant chiller to your conventional chiller and set the temperature 7.2 degrees. You can have a combination if the areas are small, your water quantity is required for the radiant are less. Then you can have one single chiller operating at a higher delta T. So 7 instead of 712, it can be 750, right? And the return water from the condenser can be used for the radiant system. It can be done so to save the capex part of it.
Okay, sir. Do we need separate pumping system also as well as for chiller?
Yeah, it will definitely be a separate pumping because these two are a separate circuit. So you need to have a separate pumping system. For the conventional will have its own pumping system, while the radiant will have its own conventional system. But if we are utilizing the same chiller, then the tapping we should take it from the conventional return pipe. There again you need to have put your own radiant pumping system, which will pump the water to the complete radiant system and bring it back to the return water temperature of the conventional system. So that hydraulics has to be worked out in that way.
Okay, sir. So we can also use the plate type heat exchanger for with existing chiller for that radiant cooling for a lower higher temperature water.
Yeah, you can do it that way. You can have if you have water.
Yeah.
You can have that way. You can circulate the 712 water from one side and you can generate a 1512 water on the other side, and that water you can utilize for the radiant system. But here what happens, you are
Okay.
utilizing the 712 where we are already cold chilled the water. You already spent the energy in cooling that water, and that you are utilizing by putting heat exchanger. You are utilizing for the radiant. So your energy saving doesn't happen in that case. So that is the reason either you tap it from the return water temperature, or you do put a separate chiller for that. Then only you can achieve a energy saving in that case. But if you put a heat exchanger, you already cold chilled the water. You already spent the energy on that, and then you are again increasing the water temperature. So where is the saving in energy? There is no saving in the energy in that. Yeah, of course. If
The
the
last
water
question of session. So last question of session, what would be the water quality we have to consider? Any chemical treatment we required, or we have to maintain the system?
the water quality is the same what you maintain for the chilled water system. The same pH level, same water quality is required. Here, advantage with the radiant is there is no evaporation losses. The water quantity is very much less. There is no evaporation happening over here, so there is no losses over happening over here. Unless some wall fails or something like that, then only the makeup water is required. So one time good quality water is good enough, and you chemically dose that water to maintain that that water. That is the same as your chilled water system.
Okay, sir. So